we're live. Altbays Show brought to you by Altbays.nz. This is show number 183. Can I have some claps for? Thank you. There was even like a remix. Did you see that? He was like, what? With the claps.
It's like bunny hopping in the car when you're in this driving.
That's Taylor, the driver. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful mission. We've been doing these shows for over 1 year. Now we live stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. So make sure to tune in, subscribe to our channel so you know who is coming to the show. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow us there too. We break down the shows. We turn them into clips and reels so you can have a taste of what we're doing. And then you can go on YouTube or on your leading audio platform, the one that you prefer, and listen to the whole show. How cool is that? Our media group is also publishing this beautiful thing here. Look at this, the Coromide magazine. Wow. How beautiful. This cover was made by Emma Evangeline Gustafsson, who was actually a guest on our show, and she's so onto it. We got beautiful people from the community writing pieces and beautiful artists illustrating the pages. Look at this page here.
Stop it.
Illustrated by DIANNE, a local artist, on a beautiful article, Raising Bilingual Children, the Power of Language and Culture. Written by...
Yours truly.
Hello, Maddie. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora.
How are you?
No, I'm good. How are you, Leo?
Freaking out.
Nah.
I'm good. Maddie, how was for you to write about learning languages when you're young and the importance of it for you?
It was fairly easy, to be honest. It's just something that I've always desired, something that's always been a part of me, so it's kind of flowed. But it's interesting trying to like put your thoughts and your experiences into words and like capture the audience and not give too much, but give enough to get them hooked, kind of thing. But
and then you have the amount of words that you have to follow, and you got to make sure
that's always my favorite. Current essay is sitting at 88 words, so not quite at the 2,000 mark yet. So
you'll get there.
We'll get there.
You'll get there.
I'm a very sink or swim, last minute person. You're laughing.
So Maddie,
because I know.
Yes, Di knows. Maddie came to our show as a guest. We'll have a look at the number. Do you remember the number? Ooh.
64.
64. Yeah, there was a cool show. We had Chloe Potai.
We did.
As a co-host, and that was amazing.
Kia ora, Chloe. Where in the world, yeah? Where in the world is Chloe Potai?
She just arrived from Chicago, and I think she's off again very soon. So
stop it.
I know, hey, living the dream.
Living the dream.
And for the ones who don't know, you run the Te Puna Reo O, which is...
Te Puna Reo Whitianga. So we're a free bilingual certificated play group operating right next door to Mercury Bay Area School, 20A South Highway. Tuesdays, Thursdays, 9 till 12. Come along and, kia kaha te reo Māori. Free service. Meet some cool mums. Have a yarn.
Ka pai.
Have a kani.
Ka pai. Got some yoga classes going on as well? Is that right?
We do. A good friend of mine, Saha, is doing some yoga sessions on Sunday evenings. So you can always message us through our Facebook and I can get in touch with her.
Kia ora, thank you.
Very cool.
We have the pleasure tonight to have a chat with DIANNE Taylor. Hello, Di.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
How are you?
Tēnā koe.
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good. This is a novel experience. It's awesome to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Do you like the space?
I love it. It feels all very official and like celebrity-like. So yeah,
Ooh,
yeah. Feeling the love.
Feeling the love. Yeah. Thank you so much. Just before we start, I want to say thank you to our dear sponsors from Bay's Pizzeria, bringing some... Oh, hey.
Whatever that pizza was with the mushrooms and that balsamic vinegar, oh, my days.
They're onto it.
I'll be down shortly.
And the deep fried camembert.
Oh, you've got to commit to that.
You've got to commit to it. Whole piece at once.
Wow, they know it. Yeah. They know what they're doing. So Henry and his family, beautiful whānau, running a business in town. So if you are coming to the Coromandel or if you live here, make sure to check them out. Bays.fiti, and Taylor will have them on the screen. So make sure to stop by and have some kai from our dear friends Bays Pizzeria. I posted a story on Instagram with the feast that we had here, so make sure to check them out. Okay, let's do this. Di is a social worker and an emergency medical technician for St. John's Healthcare Ambulance. She lived in Christchurch for 17 years, including through the earthquakes, and as a social worker, she supported the Muslim community post-mosque shootings. In her words, Di has a crazy family tree due to being adopted. In her work life, she's been a banker, a money market dealer, a veterinary nurse, and an adult educator and mental health support worker. Di has been highly involved in voluntary work throughout her life. She's done silent Buddhist retreats and explored various belief systems. She's an artist who loves reading, a gym goer, cold exposure believer who challenges herself by going to winter swims when possible.
So just all round mana wahine then.
Absolutely, I'll own that. I sound really impressive. I'm kind of, is that really me? That's very cool. I'd like to qualify that the cold water when possible is not when it's big surf and not when it's really muddy after rain.
Yep.
So I'm hoping for more settled winter weather so I can swim again this winter.
But I like that part, the cold exposure believer. Is it something that you've been tapping into recently?
Yes. Yes. You sort of get these messages come to you. And you're like, oh, that's the third time now. It started off with actually my doctor saying to me, I was talking about chronic pain. He's like, get in the water and swim. And I'm like, do you know how cold it is? And he's like, that's the whole point. And then I read Wim Hof's book, The Iceman. And then someone else mentioned cold water too. And I was like, okay. And traditionally, my family were like, no, she's lost her marbles. I'm someone who in summer, when it's 23 degrees and the water goes, it's cold. And my husband would be like, what are you doing? I'm psyching myself up to put my toe in. So when I proclaimed a couple of years ago in April, I'm going for a swim.
April?
Yeah, I started in April.
Wow.
And went in and I swam all through that winter. That was a couple of years ago. And it was like, I think 12.3 degrees. I'd check, how cold is it today? And I swam once or twice a week all through winter. I don't know if anybody's...
Did you notice like immediate effects, like positive effects on you? Because I know there's like quite a big following with the Iceman and the ice baths and everything for a long time now. Like,
I think for me it was the attitude shift, and that stayed permanent. Like, if I go to get in water now, it's like, it's going to be cold, and it's like, that's the whole point. And I do cold showering. So if I'm not swimming, I'm doing cold shower. Yeah. And I think it's that changes that mindset. And I think that's why.
Shocks your system.
Yeah, it shocks your system. So there's that whole adrenaline thing. But in terms of the benefits for well-being, it's apparently around the fact that if you get into a mindset where you go, this is going to be hard, but I'm going to do it anyway, that's a good mindset. And it's a sort of a mindset training. But yeah, and we've just been away, and I've been in the water so much, and just if it's cold, it's cold. That's the whole deal. You get in, and sometimes it's not, and so that's been some things are just a monumental shift in your thinking. That's been one.
And I feel like the rewards as well. Like when you wake up and you don't want to wake up, and then you start moving a little bit, and you're like, cool, I'm gonna go and face that cold shower, and then that feeling. Just after, that's such a good feeling of like, cool, I got something done already, like my day is starting well, I'm awake.
And I did notice it, you overhear conversations when we were away, and I heard people going, oh, no, I'm not going to get in the water, I'll be a bit cold. And you miss out. And I think I used to have that, that sort of, I wish I enjoyed the water like they do. But it's a mindset. You just get in, and hearing people going, oh, no, it's going to be a bit cold, I don't think I'll go in. And you sort of bite your tongue. You feel like saying, just harden up and get in there. It'll be great. Boom. Just go. Just go. Yeah, so that's been an interesting thing that I've continued. Yeah.
How long have you been working as a social worker, Di?
I qualified in 2014. That was the last year of my degree. And went from there to Burwood Hospital and worked as a casual social worker across all of their wards for nearly 5 years. And the last sort of chunk of that was the last few months I did with the Muslim community. And then we moved up here. So we moved up here at the end of 2019.
But you were working with mental health before that, right?
Yeah, so I was a mental health support worker for a few years. I did a diploma in mental health support work while I was working as a casual mental health support worker in a respite house. So we had acutely unwell people. And our house was there to try and keep people out of hospital.
Yeah, my mum was also doing similar mahi years ago in North Shore.
Oh, cool. Who was she working for?
Te Hao, Te Oranga o Ngāti Whātua at the time.
Okay, yeah.
Something like a stage 3 level housing unit in the community,
Yes.
getting community, reintegrating them back into the community.
Okay.
But again, like very unwell people, and it was so eye-opening as a young,
Oh, I bet.
like,
Yeah.
I think it would have been about 12, 13, 14, you know, and just meeting these people who are so unwell, it just like opened our eyes at such a young age.
I remember my boys being about that age when I was doing adult education, and I think that, like, I can see it was the same eye-opener for them, because some of those kids had had a pretty rough time.
Yeah.
That ended up being in that alternative to education. So, yeah.
What's the thing with adult education in New Zealand? Because in Brazil we have a huge number of what's the words when you cannot read and write? There's a word.
Illiterate. Yeah, literacy.
Illiterate. So there's a huge number of people who are not, because it's just like a third world country, 200 million people. So it's a common thing to see, but like, I don't hear much about those numbers in New Zealand, about people who cannot read.
There's too much shame around it.
Yeah, lots of shame, and people like to think it doesn't exist.
Yeah. We're quite good at that.
Yeah.
So is it focused on mainly on writing and reading, or when you say adult education, it
was broad. I don't know. You're probably more au fait with where this is at now. I think when I was coming out of adult ed, they were kind of clamping down on the courses, because you could do all sorts.
Yeah, you could. You still can if you want to pay $5,000 and do a 6-week course. And then
yes, whereas these were all the free ones. Remember, they were around for a while, and I think they've cut down on those. I worked with Salvation Army.
Yeah.
Some of it was adults who just needed a bit of redirection, so they might be learning computer skills, budgeting. We did have a class that was kids that are a bit more,
complex
hardcore.
needs.
Complex needs is probably more the correct word than hardcore, but they were.
Yeah.
They were younger people who had fallen shy of the system. And then it was a mix. There was those classes which were free that anybody could enrol in, and it was a way of getting people engaged in something, but they also were starting to introduce the paid ones then, and you could pay to be a barista and pay to go and do a floristry course and
pay to become a flight attendant.
Whereas we used to, it's a very, very different world, and I think adult ed's probably a different scene now to when I worked in it. Do
you feel like there's a lot of ego involved for adults not wanting to go back and study because they're like, oh no, I'm old, I know what I know? And
I guess it depends on what you're studying. I mean, I was a mature student.
Same.
Yeah, and I think now I don't know, it's probably different now. I felt kind of proud, and my kids were still at school, so it was like, hopefully I'm setting a good example for my kids that you can study forever and it'll only marginally kill you.
Or them.
Yeah, or them. I've just enrolled in some study again. I really should go and bury myself somewhere.
Just stop.
Just stop. It's like, just stop. But yeah, I think the shame might be if you have got literacy issues, or if your education or your need for further education is tied to the fact that for some reason you can't get a job because you haven't got some skills or some literacy. I think that's different to an adult going back to university, or
one day realising you actually hate your life and your job.
I don't want to be a banker anymore.
I'm an adult. I can do what I want.
I think I'll just keep reinventing myself until I find something I like.
Yeah.
Because that connects with your story, right? You were kind of pushed to go to the finances world.
My mum, God bless her soul, my mum had a brother who was a banker, and he was successful, and she decided that's what she would like her children to be. So we just didn't have a choice. So she'll go and work in a bank, he'll go and work in a bank. And we did. My brother and I both left and worked in banks. He hated it and ended up leaving the country to escape very quickly. I took longer to come to my senses, but I did end up enjoying the hedonistic era of money market dealing. In the 80s, I was a yuppie.
I'm just picturing, where were you working in the 80s?
In Wellington.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Windy City. I'm just picturing shoulder pads.
Yes.
Did you have
absolutely.
a perm?
I did.
Oh, yes, you did.
I had a perm. I had lots of bright eyeshadow.
Oh my God.
And it was one of those.
Blue eyeshadow, pink lips.
No, it depended on what I was wearing. It had to match. Now, come on. I was fully colour coordinated. All
White
my
snake
money.
skin, winkle pickers.
I tell you, we earned ridiculous money. We earned money that would be considered a good salary now, and it all went on alcohol, makeup, alcohol, clothes, alcohol, perfume, and I think we probably spent a bit on alcohol. I think.
You don't
it was,
say.
it was the kind of era where you'd turn up at the bar, the Key Point bar, or whatever it was called, and your drinks would be waiting on the the bar when you turned up. They're like, got your B-52s ready for you, love.
On a first name basis.
Yeah, pretty much. It was. Yeah, it was.
Was that experience like a wake up call to understand social differences and issues in the
not
world?
that,
Or no?
that one. No.
You know, and let's say,
No.
I mean, in the long run,
I'm
years
just
later.
visualising like an 80s New Zealand version of like Wolf on Wall Street.
Yeah, that was us.
Yeah.
I'm sure at the
Way
time,
less classy.
I'm sure at the time you were picking, but late or even like nowadays when you reflect on it and you understand the systems that you were
Yeah.
dealing with, does that like click for you? Of like, wow.
It does, and it was interesting when I did my social work degree, and we had units on social policy and how financial markets and governments and policy and that whole, neoliberal economics model impacts clients. And a lot of my fellow students were like, "Oh, we don't get this. Let's go to the beach. We're going to skip this class." Whereas for me, it just made sense. I knew that system in and out. I'm still familiar with them. My husband was a banker for years, so I very much can sit with a client and understand the big constructs around them that impact on their lives.
When we talk social work, are we talking exclusively and 100% people from lower classes? No.
It depends on what kind of social work you're doing. It would be fair to say if you're in a hospital, people. Like I was a hospital social worker for years, and people coming from, rich people break their hips too. Rich people have spinal injuries too. So it depends on the setting.
I thought like it would be more because they can afford, they can go for more specific professional, like people that, I don't know. Is that a misconception of mine?
I think there's a very fine line between social work and counselling. Social work is, you kind of don't go and hire a social worker. You might go for counselling or psychotherapy or something, but generally social work steps in when there's some need that's going on that isn't easily fixed by counselling or psychotherapy or whatever. It's slightly different. It operates in that kind of structural real world. It can be very process driven.
And it's heavy work.
It can be.
It's heavy work. In all areas. Obviously, working in a hospital, you would have been working with patients who have experienced trauma and then breakdowns and
all sorts
like
of
we're
stuff.
talking about, you've been in Australia recently.
Yes.
And if you want to share on that.
Oh, the dude on the beach?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we were just having a talk about an event that happened on a beach while I was on holiday. And, where you look at that as an ambulance crew and where it might be for the other people involved. We turned up at a beautiful, beautiful beach, and it became apparent after about the first swim that something was going on. And there was people running, and it's like, what's going on? They said, oh, man's been pulled out of the water. He's unresponsive. And I do you think they need an EMT? And she's like, are you an EMT? I went, yeah. And she went, get over there. So I very classily ran down the beach in my bikini.
Cue the Baywatch theme song.
Cue the Baywatch theme song, please. It's not how I looked. I know it's not. But yeah, and I became part of a team that was me, off-duty EMT, another off-duty EMT, an off-duty nurse, and then there was some paramedics and an EMT who turned up who were obviously on duty. And we're just talking about the fact that this man, I suspect, didn't make it. They put him in the ambulance, I think, to get him away from public view. His wife was there. It was awful.
Traumatic, beach
very
fellas,
traumatic.
families.
Yeah, people, they kept trying to pull people away, but people like to watch. But we were just saying, I came away later and, people were like, are you okay? And it's like, this is what I do for a job. Although I did notice what it was like not to have my crew around to reflect on that job. But, we were just saying there was Joe Public on the beach. There was a bunch of they were mainly young men actually, because they were fit and strong, doing the chest compressions on this man for half an hour. And they all just get to walk away. And it's like, wow, how was that for them? Because...
And carry on with their day.
Carry on with your day. Just go back to your beach.
And just pretend like nothing happened and I'm okay and that's not going to affect me.
Go and have a beer. You've just seen somebody die in public. But yeah, you'll be right.
But we'll just put them in the ambulance so you don't have to.
Yes, yeah, it was interesting. They put them in the ambulance, and I sort of said to my husband, I don't think that's a good outcome. And we saw the ambulance later, and it had not gone screaming off to hospital with its lights on.
But again, at the same time, there's protocols and procedures and things.
Absolutely.
Like, not only are you dealing on the patient who's in whatever situation it is, cardiac arrest or what have you, drowning, you've got to protect yourself and your co-workers and Joe Public, like you say.
And actually, it's because we were talking about the fact that you have got friends and family involved in surf lifesaving.
Yeah.
And I know growing up, my boys weren't involved, but they had a lot of friends were. And seeing what happens when they are young teenagers, they're teenagers, saving lives and sometimes losing lives. And it's big,
heavy mahi.
It's heavy.
Yeah, so I was saying I did a first aid course with them a couple of years ago with the Hot Water Beach Surf Lifesaving Club, and it wasn't until we kind of halfway through the day that I realised, oh my God, all of these lifeguards are teenagers. Like, how many of us adults are stepping up to toe talk with these kids? You know, you go out there, Hot Water Beach, it's a beautiful beach, but then, you know, like, they're carrying so much responsibility, and they've got an incredible club. They're like a whānau, you know, but I always think about that, like, shit, man, like,
it's huge.
That's a lot for them to hold, if that comes to that.
And it does, inevitably it does. I mean, I know my son's friends group, they had all been involved in rescues that I can think of. And then I compare it to, we've just been in Aussie, and your lifeguards in Sydney, they generally look older. I suspect they're all paid. They've got authority. It's a career. If they want to clear the beach, they clear the beach. In New Zealand, you know, if you want to tell someone you shouldn't really be getting drunk and swimming in your jeans, they can just tell you where to go, and you can't do a thing about it. And
you've just got to wait and watch.
Knowing that it's going to come undone.
So how is that whole situation with the health system in the country, in your view? Like, when you look at the big picture, because you were involved, you're part of it.
It's broken. I think we all know that. I think what's interesting is within New Zealand, you do talk to people who've got this belief that the system's broken, which I think it is quite broken, but that it's just our problem, and it's not. You know, we just spent 3 weeks in Aussie where they have elements of their system that are actually worse than ours. They have elements that are better. We've had staff coming from the UK, for example, to work here because they're sick of working in a system that's 10 times more broken than ours. I think our systems are broken, but I think they're broken globally, and I don't know quite why that is. I think maybe it is that, dare I say it, neoliberal economic process that's, we all thought that if you just let market forces work, that everybody would have everything they need and money would be shared around and services would be funded, and it's just not how it works. I don't know what the solution is apart from maybe higher taxes. 10,000 people are shooting me now, I can hear it. But the money's got to come from somewhere for health systems and education systems and, you know, systems that will support people in those lower socioeconomic situations to you don't bring people out of that without lots of support and wraparound stuff.
Do you believe in people in a capitalist world? Do you believe in people becoming more empathetic? I was just reading recently that I think 300 families in New Zealand pay way lower taxes than the poor, and then, you know, we're all well aware of those things, and it's funny because we laugh because we're so nervous about it, like we're so angry about it, but like it has to come to a tipping point, you know, like if you look back in history, we see different ways of governments like just falling apart, you know, like, so we know that the money, the way that it is right now, it might not last for that long, and then like, but at the end of the day, it's just people. It's people dealing with people and understanding what's going on around them. Like, is it too much to ask for people to change?
Yeah, I think it's too much to ask for. I think it's too much to ask for some people to change, and it's probably a lot to ask for people who are. I think once you've got a lot, you defend it, and I think you defend it by othering others. So, those beneficiaries, you know. I mean, I work with a lot of beneficiaries, and I still have friends who say to me, beneficiaries, they're all sitting around there living the lap of luxury. And I'm like, no, they're not. But people who have got something to fend, who, you know, maybe got a very comfortable life with more than enough money, will justify having what they've got and not needing to share it, and I don't want to pay more tax, and because it's actually their fault they're like that. And they will other people, you know, the other people who are bad or poor or whatever. It's their fault. It's a them and us. It's a very much a them and a deserving and an undeserving. You know, I worked hard for what I've got. Well, maybe you did. Maybe you were just lucky that, you know.
What about all our minimum wage workers, frontline workers working through lockdowns? Yeah,
so maybe you're just lucky that you work really hard at something really lucrative. Because, you know, I could say, I work hard. You work really hard at your kura. Working hard's not enough, actually, sometimes, to put food on the table.
And especially when you have a big heart.
Yes.
And you're volunteering.
Yes. Yeah, and, you know, volunteering keeps the wheels of the world turning. But, yeah, I think if you have lots and you can justify all the reasons why you don't have to share it, then I don't know. I think you need a lot of really benevolent, altruistic, wealthy people to somehow fund the shortfall. But yeah, I think the answer is probably higher taxes. You look at other countries who have really good processes and they tend to have higher taxes. But the problem is, I think once you've got the tax system we've got, it's very hard to put a tax rate up. Very easy to lower it. Everybody thinks that's yay, wonderful. Very hard to go, I'm going to tax you more now because we need to fund whatever.
When you say higher taxes, you're talking specifically about people who earn more overall?
I think earn more. I think if you're earning millions and millions of dollars a year, you shouldn't be able to evade tax. I do think we need a capital gains tax. There's things we could be taxing that we don't. You know,
I remember a couple of years ago, so my little brother lives in Perth. He's a financial advisor, and so when we had to vote on the
capital gains tax,
capital gains. Yeah. I knew nothing about it. So he's like, "How? Yeah, why the doesn't New Zealand have capital gains tax? This is a joke."
What is that, Maddie? Can you tell us?
No, I can't. I still don't understand it. Probably that's why he's rich and I'm not.
The biggest issue that we don't tax for capital gains tax is that we can buy and sell houses. And I know people go, but there's a bright line test now. You've got to own the house for so many years. So you've got to own a house. I think it might be 5 years or 7 years at the moment. And then you can sell it and you don't pay profit. You don't pay tax on the profit. So if you think about a housing market that's just gone up and up and up, and you know, you can buy a house and sell it for $300,000 more and don't pay tax as long as you've held on to it for 5 years. You don't pay tax on that. So where else can you earn $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 and not pay tax? It's insane.
Whereas 5 or so years ago, you had people picking up houses at the peak, flipping them without even actually signing the papers. Yeah. So I think the bright line test or limit or whatever it is 5 years. So if you sell it within that time, you pay tax on it. But it's like, well, boo-hoo, that's great. You've earned that money for doing very well nothing. So, yeah, pay tax on it. Yeah.
Oof. Would you?
Have you got something lighter we could talk about there? This is getting heavy.
I was I was actually going a little bit deeper because here we go. Because one of the things that I read in your bio is that you went through different belief systems. So you go there and check your faith and different things that are happening. And when you mentioned, we should be taxing some businesses that don't pay tax, that's where my mind go, because I always think about churches and these big religious institutions that I don't have any problems to complain about or to have an opinion, because I grew up in a Catholic family, Christian family, and mom and dad, they were not pushing it, but they were taking us to the church, we would do the first communion and all the stuff. So it was just what they knew at the time.
I feel like that was just society at the time. It was an expectation. Right? That's just what you did.
Yeah, and then even nowadays when I talk to mom, because now she knows clearly that I don't have a religion, but I stopped attacking them because I think I'm more mature, and I understand that like the people are actually the victims of it. The people who hold their faith, you know, like it makes the lives of so many people better.
Yeah.
To hold on to something, you know, what really upsets me obviously is the people who are at the top, you know, moving the thread. So I just wanted to ask you about that. Like, how is that journey for you? Like to go to different places and see people exercising their right to have different beliefs, and then we might link to the Muslim community that you know, I'm just
Yeah, sure. I'm like you. I was raised Catholic. And Catholicism was wielded as a very heavy weapon. Catholicism was, if you don't do what your parents say, you will go to hell. So it's very much you have been bad, you will rot in hell. I did do a bit of that rebellion against the whole religious thing. But yeah, I've sort of explored spiritualism. I did quite a bit of bosoms. I did some bosoms for a while. I got involved in some Buddhism. Quite a bit after the earthquakes. I sort of had a day. It was quite funny. I'd had a day where I'd woken up. I hadn't smoked since I was 16. As a teenager, I smoked for a year or two. And I remember post-quake. So this is a long time after being 16. I woke up one morning and thought, God, I could do with a cigarette. And I was like, holy shit, that's not normal. What's going on? Maybe I need to do some meditation or something. Because clearly
anything's better than that.
Wow.
What is smoking now is not good. Where's that come from? So I trotted off to a Kadampa Buddhism centre and got quite involved. And it was great. It was what I needed. It was a way of,
at the time,
of breathing and letting go that didn't involve smoking. And yes, and that was when I did some amazing silent retreats. It was the first time I'd done anything like that. It wasn't entirely silent in the sense that you were silent from dinner all the way through that night and all the way through the next morning until after lunch.
How was that?
Do you know what? It was amazing. There was no TV.
Like after how long was it amazing?
No, it was amazing straight from the get-go. Yeah.
What, you weren't like scared of those voices, or was that just me?
No, my voices are very friendly and compliant. There was teachings, there was Buddhist teachings, and there was meditation, and so the idea was that you got these teachings and then you reflected on them. And there was nothing to read, there was no radio, there was no TV, there was no phones, there was nothing. We were up in the mountains. It was actually really cool, and yeah, you get kind of liberated from having to talk. And that can lead. I can imagine for some people it would be terrifying, but I found it great. And I did have one of those moments where it was one of the teachings, and I remember meditating and going, "Oh, wow!" And had this real light bulb moment. And yeah, it did one of those big shifts in thinking about some stuff. So yeah, so I've done a bit of that, and I think I was saying to you, I've been listening on and off to some stuff around Stoicism, which is kind of a religion, but an ancient Greek philosophy. Everything is as it should be, and we just need to suck it up as kind of, the summary of it. But I love it. I find it really good. But yeah, I had some Muslim friends prior to the work I did, but that was a real eye opener. I was really embraced by the Muslim community, but there were times where you literally had to put your own values aside, working with a Muslim woman who's like, well, I can't go out and I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do all these things. My husband's died. And just acknowledging that, yes, that's true for you within your faith, but actually you've come to New Zealand for a better life, and maybe there's a way we can find to help you be different and still be true to your faith. And yeah, that's
treading a very fine line, though.
It is a super fine line, and it's interesting because people make this sweeping judgment about Islam is misogynistic and it controls women. And I was lucky enough to become friends with a woman who was actually an American woman who had moved to Indonesia, chosen Islam as a faith. She'd been brought up in a very quite fundamentalist Christian background. And she was just like a huge education for me. And she was like, it's not Islam. It's the culture's interpretation of Islam.
Yeah.
And she explained about the fact that it's not just the Quran. So like we have the Bible, and within that Bible you've got the letters of the apostles. And the Quran has these hadith, and it's all these different people's, essentially the apostles' interpretation. And she was saying sometimes when very fundamentalist ideas are wielded in the name of Islam, it's because somebody is adhering to a particularly fundamentalist hadith or interpretation, was how I understood what she was saying. But yeah, it was treading a very fine line. There was certainly in some of the cultural settings, it did look what we as a Western society or a feminist society would say is misogynistic, but the woman I dealt with didn't. They weren't going, oh gosh, I wish I could just go out, but my brother won't let me. That's not how it was. This was their culture. This was their belief system. This was how they lived and what they believed, and it was interesting.
I want to ask about culture for both of you actually, but just before we do that, tonight is our pizza giveaway. So the first person who is watching us and types on our YouTube chat, I believe in pizza.
I believe in pizza.
It's a good one, isn't it, Maddie?
It's terrible.
Who doesn't?
Oh, Maddie, you don't believe in pizza, Maddie.
Everybody believes in pizza.
That was just a terrible catchphrase. We're going to work on that, Leo. We'll work on that.
I believe in pizza. First one who types I believe in pizza takes a voucher to go and get a pizza at Bay's Pizzeria. Beautiful.
Worshipping at the altar of pizza.
Culture. I think Chloe even asked you something about that in Maori culture. If there are things that it was not exactly like that, but we got into this conversation of like, how much do we have to hold because of our tradition, because of our culture? Like, how is this process of like we're still who we are, but maybe we can leave this behind, or maybe we can change this a little bit, or the times are different. And I guess for you dealing with these people that you're there to support, and then you have to pay attention to your judgments, to what you think that is right, to what you grew up with, and having to find the words to deal with those people. Like, so how is that relationship for you with like culture in general? Do we keep it? Do we don't? How do we deal with this?
Oh gosh, that's a big question.
Big question.
It is a big question.
You're next.
Yeah, and it's, I think it's a particularly relevant question for an immigrant population, and whether it's the people I worked with, and they while they were Muslim, they were actually from all over the world. There was refugee people, there was people who'd been here for years, who were born here. There was everything. And yeah, and you can see the conflict there, or the conflict's maybe not the right word, the tension there that sits with the older generations.
Cultural differences,
Yeah, and the younger generations, that tension that sits between wanting to be, faithful and adherent to,
you want to acknowledge your ways
absolutely.
And your tikanga.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the world is a never-evolving place. Absolutely. It's not exactly how it was 200 years ago.
And the country that you have come to has its own tikanga and its own kawa.
I can't wait for that to flourish through Aotearoa, like they've got changes to the New Zealand curriculum happening at the moment and stuff. So Te Reo Māori is going to be taught regardless of whether or not you like it, and why shouldn't it be,
fantastic.
And that's why I was saying you're treading that fine line.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to takahi on tōna mana, like you don't want to like stand on their mana and their mauri or their ihi, whatever their spiritual essence or faith, cultural values are.
Yeah.
And again, you've got to kind of adapt that to the country that you're in.
And that's hard.
But you as a social worker who's trained in all this, you've got to find and navigate that path to make them to make them carry on and calm enough to succeed.
It was interesting because one of the reasons I was originally put in and asked to be the social worker for that community was that there was concern that women were having men stand in front of them and not being able to hear their voice heard and perhaps being exploited. And it's like, well, actually, what is exploited? Like, we know what it looks like to us. But if a woman, I can think of one particular family who I ended up dealing with her quite a bit, but every time I rang her, she goes, you need to speak to my brother. But that's just how it was. That wasn't oppression or exploitation in her eyes at all.
That was her protection?
That was her protection. Wow. That was her culture. That's how it was. She was grieving.
Men and women have their places.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was her role it was for her to be, she had a brother, he was to be a gatekeeper and a protector while she was grieving. And so, this original concept for why they wanted me in there as a social worker.
That you say that, like he's her protector, who's a buffer.
Absolutely.
We don't have that.
No.
We get our 3 days bereavement leave if you're lucky, and you just carry on. Yeah, no,
it just the whole way it was seen by that community was quite different. I remember one woman saying to me, "I know I'm really sad now." She said, "This is awful, but I know that given a bit more time, I will see my son as a martyr for Islam." And I thought, if that's how you deal, that's cool. That's your belief system. And she really believed that eventually that's how she would come to see it, and that would actually make it okay for her.
Yeah.
So you can't question that, even though you're thinking, wow, that's really different. That's different to how another belief system.
But you have to open up your eyes to their perception, and if that's not your culture, I think you should just turi.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Maddie,
Maddie,
for someone who is going deep and studying and spending hours understanding, well, look at me, I'm putting you up, man.
Is my concealer on?
Does that empower you to question as well, like to go for changes, or it's more like to be aware of the world that you're part of and what your culture represents? Do you feel like you have more authority to question some of the beliefs that come in the Maori tradition, in the Maori world?
I definitely don't think I have more authority. Natural curiosity, yes. And obviously being a teacher or student teacher, and in the mahi I have done the last 10 so years, once you see things, you can't unsee them. And when you start seeing whether it's like religious bias or racism within the schooling system or learning needs or whatever it is, you can't unsee it. And so regardless of whether or not it's culture, it's, I think, have you got the mana to say something and step up and find a solution instead of chopping them down, Like, I do what I can do, but I don't think it gives me any more authority.
Maybe more confidence, that more standing stronger in your own.
Yeah, because once you start
identity,
knowing things, like I said before, like if you don't know diddly squat, you don't know diddly squat. So go read a book. Yeah, and talk to some educated people, learn something new.
Learn something.
And you mentioned the beautiful thing that it will be part of the curriculum, right? It's coming. Flipping that situation, how do you see the preparation for the teachers, especially for the ones who are not Maori and not necessarily even understand the culture and the words? And how are we going to do that? Is it like just respecting the process and understanding that it's going to be slow, or we have to focus on the educators?
I think it is going to be a slow process, but I attend Te Wānanga Raukawa, so we are a Māori university, So it's beautiful to see Māori people being taught by Māori people. So I don't think we can leave our reo and our tikanga and our culture up to people who might not necessarily agree with it or acknowledge it. That's a very, very interesting one I've experienced recently. The conversation was, but me and my family don't believe in Māori. I was like, wow, it's 2023 and this is the thing.
We don't believe in Māori.
Yeah, yes. But that's just it. Like,
that's special.
How do you?
Wow. So with I don't even know where to go
No.
with that. Yeah. Was that like? Do you think
that's why I like to kick things?
Were they saying they don't believe in the Māori language and te reo, or they just don't
at all?
Okay.
And that's a scary world to be living in 2023.
Yeah.
People still don't acknowledge each other.
Yeah,
we're just this thing.
It is that thing, I think. We like to think we've come such a long way that we're no longer racist or discriminate against, LGBTQI, or that we don't discriminate against religious. But
we've all got our own bias.
Scratch the surface, it's all there.
That's it. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, yellow, red, green. Like, if you don't like red, and you're taught to not like red, intergenerational trauma and all of that.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Di, when was the mass shooting? What year was that? 2018?
2019.
No. 2019. Where were you just before that? What were you doing?
I was on a plane. So we had moved up here. We were building a house. We were partway through the build. Our oldest son was still living in our house in Christchurch. He was working, studying to travel. So we'd moved up here. We were staying at Rings Beach, renting a place, and I was going backward and forward. I had a casual contract at Burwood as a social worker, and my boss said, don't resign, because if you're going to be back here for a week or so at a time, you never know if we'll need you. And I was going backward and forward. And I left here on Friday, that March, that 15th, and I landed to missed phone calls from my husband. I was like, that's weird. He must know I've been in the air. And he was like, you have to call me before you leave the airport. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And so, I was up in the air, and I landed at Christchurch Airport, and he was like, a friend was leaving her car at the airport for me, and my route home to Redcliffs would have gone either past Dean's Ave or past Linwood. That was the two routes home. He said, you can't go home the normal way. And I was like, why not? He goes, well, it's been the shooting. I'm like, what? What do you mean a shooting? He goes, well, there's been this, they think it's a terrorist. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just go to Linwood Ave. He went, no, you can't go that way. There's been a shooting there too. And I was like, well, what? And I started looking around, and I could see quite intense conversations happening around me. It's like, okay. He said, just check what's going on before you go home. So I rang my son, and he'd been sent home from work because the minute it became apparent to some really lovely person that the police were all busy, they had essentially done a raid where he was working, and they'd gone into a landscaping area and filled up their truck and then just done a drive off. And so his work had said, look, this clearly we've got issues, you need to go home. And I rang him, and I said, look, I'm on my way home. And his voice, the fear, he said, Mum, you can't drive home, you'll get shot. I said, no, I'm not going to get shot. He goes, no, because initially they thought there were several gunmen.
Yeah.
He said, no, there's gunmen. And I said, no, look, I'll go right round the long way. I'll be fine. And I got home, and we both just sat in shock for a while. And eventually, after a couple of hours, I thought I'd better ring my boss. And I'm here. Do you think you'll need me? And she's like, yeah. So I started on the Monday at the crisis centre. And after a few days, I went to see my boss. So I just basically went into the crisis centre and did 3 days there. Then on the 4th day, I thought I'd pop along. And
what was the work that you were doing?
It was like, just go and see what needs doing. And the biggest, most overwhelming thing on that first day, in fact, the biggest, most overwhelming thing initially was immigration issues, because people wanted family. I want family here. I've lost a family member, or I've got a family member injured. I want family here. And I didn't even get halfway through the first day, and it became clear we didn't have immigration there.
My God.
I rang the Prime Minister's office, of course you do.
Of course, you got her on speed dial.
And I said, look, this is who I am, and this is what I'm doing, and we have to have immigration here. These people are all deeply traumatised, and they've got multiple issues, but they aren't interested in any of them but the fact that they need family here. And they went, okay, we'll pass the message on. And I hadn't heard in a couple of hours, so I rang again. I'm basically stalking the Prime Minister's office at this point. And I said, look, it's me again. They went, look, the Prime Minister said you have been heard, and we'll get onto it. So the next day they actually moved the crisis centre from Hagley, the school there, but that's by Hagley Park, and they moved us to the sort of botanical horticultural centre, I think it was. And sure enough, the next morning, the first people that arrived were these immigration dudes in suits. And they were like, oh, apparently you need us. It's like, oh, yes, we so need you. And yeah, that was the biggest thing. People wanted family with them. And of course, that was an immigration nightmare.
Yeah.
So once they got immigration on the ground, then we got all the other agencies in. And fairly intense first few days, though. Also because in a disaster, the police get involved in, by and large, our disasters that we have are natural disasters. So they hand them on to civil defence, but this wasn't a natural disaster. It was a massive crime. So they initially thought, the most natural people to sort of manage this will be the people themselves. And it's like, that's great in theory. But this was a community that had lost leaders, vast amounts of its community, and so there was a really tense few days, and the council actually ended up into a partnership with the community managing.
How do you think the emergency services handled that?
Look, I don't know, because I wasn't there.
Yeah, but just from your observations of seeing these government agencies come in and turning up and not knowing.
Well, I think that, and that was probably the biggest thing. At that point, the emergency services are sort of not really involved. You know, St. John's has done their thing.
Yeah.
We did have police there all the time. That was really disconcerting. We were surrounded by police with big semi-automatic machine guns.
You feel unsafe.
The most unsafe I felt was I had been to a meeting at the hospital, and there was a no-gun policy inside the hospital for the police. And I was going from a meeting at the hospital, and they said, look, you probably should go with these cops. They're going to a meeting that's been held at the, the big justice precinct. And as we were leaving, one of the senior police said, now listen, you're not armed. You need to have eyes all around you. And as soon as you get to the justice precinct, I want you to call me. And he was saying this to the cops I was with, and I was like, holy shit. But there was a lot of ongoing threats, and I know they did arrest a guy just a few days later that was also planning. He had some weird manifesto. So that was the first time I got a real sense of actually the police were actively concerned.
Serious.
This is real shit. That and the fact that we were surrounded by police with guns. They were everywhere. They were all around the country. It wasn't just Christchurch.
It's just bizarre because, everyone thinks New Zealand's so safe.
Oh, yeah.
And then an event like that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like that happens, and then there is this continued threat and this continued, I had people from the community saying, I was just out talking to my neighbour and somebody sort of basically said, F off back to where you came from and you're this, that and the other. And it's like, where does that stuff come from?
How are you human?
Yeah.
We talked about that before the show, and that would be something cool to bring it up. So there was a big thing of social media and people saying, that's not us, that's not New Zealand. But for you, on doing the work, you kind of got a different vibe.
I did get a different vibe because I was talking to the people who had just had their community completely and utterly attacked in a really sinister way. And obviously, yes, you had so many people dead, but you had just as many casualties. So going and I initially avoided going to any of the public things. But when my husband eventually came, because obviously he was still living up here, because I'd said to him, look, I'd been offered the opportunity to do this work. Because when I went to see my boss, she was like, DHB wants to put a social worker in the community for a few months. Would you do it? Because obviously all the other social workers were pretty busy. So I'd rung him and said, can I do this? And he said to me, would you regret it if you don't? It's like, hell yeah, of course I would. So he eventually came back, but he came back, it was a good couple of weeks after the shootings by the time he finally got back and arranged to get back. And he said, can we go and look at all the flowers that were all along the botanical gardens walls? And I was like, okay. And and everybody was looking at it and people were sort of crying and they were like, oh my gosh. And I just got angrier and angrier because I was like, if this is not us, then why are these people in this community still having this hate and these threats and everything angled at them? And I think I said, I went out socially and I had people making really racist jokes about the Muslim community in front of me. And I'm like, this is not funny. This is just not funny.
Disconnected, eh?
Yeah, really disconnected. And still that thing of, it's only a joke though. It's not a joke. It allows, that saying that what we walk past is what we allow. And it's not only the Muslim community, it's just any racism. It's any racism, any discrimination.
And do you have the balls, really, to stand up and say something, or are you just going to let it slide? Yeah. Yeah, and that was it. And it was, so I got to the stage where, some people, there's some places you just don't go because you're like, I haven't got the energy to go and argue with somebody who's been racist. And I actually am still a little bit like that now. There's some people I go, no. They'll say, what do you think about such and such? It's like, I'm not having that conversation with you because I know you're on one side of a political fence and I'm on the other. And let's just leave it at that. Yeah, move on and let's talk about something different. Yeah. So, yeah.
Do you see an efficient way or something that we're missing? Because a big part of your job is to communicate with people who come to you and need support. How do we get people who come from unconscious or they're making a decision in their minds that there's no reason there, and then we still want them to get better. We want them to, I don't know if change their minds is a good way to say it, but we want them to realize that the racism, the jokes that they're doing are not suitable. And then it feels to me like that if we just kind of let it go, or if we don't try to engage in the conversation, we might not support a change. But at the same time, again, they're coming from this place that is not reasonable. How tricky it is, to establish that connection, because at the end of the day, it's just a human who didn't get something right.
I mean, would it be fair to say that you, I don't know, you sound like you're about the same. There's some people where you'll comment and other people where you just go, you know what, I'm wasting my energy.
Yeah.
I'll just save it because, you know, there are some people who you'll pull up on stuff and they're like, oh yeah.
Waste
and other people
your
are like,
energy, waste your time. Like,
I've got a lot of things I put my energy to, and I there are some places I just won't put it anymore because it's like, well, I'm clearly not going to change your mind or change your perspective. So
Kia ora.
Yeah. Some battles you don't fight, eh?
Yeah.
You choose,
your
right?
battles,
You choose. Yeah.
Wow. Ooh, racism, man, Maddie. Here we go. What a topic.
I thought it was on the no-go zone.
No. Did we not say there was no-go zones?
We did, right.
Well, certainly not many. I mean, we even talked about bosoms before inadvertently. So, you know, okay.
Some people are surprised when they come to the show or when they meet Taylor and I, because that's an interesting thing when you are active, when you're doing things and people find out about what you're doing. Suddenly you have value. Suddenly, you know, like, so
I met her.
I introduce myself and then people pick up on my accents and like that broken English. So they're like, oh yeah. And then, what do you do? Oh, I work at the school. Oh, do you? Yeah. We run a video productions in town. It's actually a media company. We publish a magazine and it's educational content. You know, like suddenly.
Oh, you've got sound equipment. Oh, you've got camera.
You've got your flash.
Suddenly everything like adds to what they think I am. Yeah. You know, and it's not actually who I am. Exactly the thing that you mentioned about the gear, like, because we have businessmen coming here, and women as well, not just businessmen, but like wealthy people coming here. And then I heard something amazing the other day, like a person who is well known in the community, quite wealthy, and was asking me, how are things going? And I'm like, the studio, it's a big investment, because I don't like to say that we're just spending money. No, I'm investing my money that could be going to savings for a house or whatever, but I believe in my dream because I believe in my actions, So I'm doing it, right? And then I said, well, the studio is still Taylor and I putting our money, but like the magazine pays itself, luckily, finally. And then he's like, so you're better than my business. Like, so you actually pay. And I'm like, I don't think you're understanding that, like,
I think we're on like
a different level.
walker.
Yeah.
So in those moments, I think I agree with you of like, I won't win that battle.
You're like,
I just gave up trying to get him as a sponsor straight away, because he's not keen to support what I'm doing.
Because he doesn't understand it.
He doesn't understand.
No. Yeah. No, he doesn't understand it.
Can be frustrating, eh?
It can be. It can be. And you do. You just have to pick your battles. So anyway, we've talked about culture and stuff, but tell us your experience of culture and growing up different places.
I think that's where I was going with that. When I started this, it's cool to see how welcoming the majority of Aotearoa New Zealand is towards foreigners, and it actually teaches me, because when Taylor and I arrived here, I noticed how a lot of things were basic, and I was like, wow, in Brazil, people would be taking advantage of that, like big time.
Well, like how we don't lock our cars in our houses.
You
just leave your kids in the car and go get.
So broad, and then because I was so used to a lifestyle of like taking advantage of the other, we just do it unconsciously, because that's the whole colonization
society,
thing, right? It was like Portugal coming to Brazil and taking everything that they could, so you just grow up with that, that's what we do, like you don't miss the opportunity to get in something or get in first, and then suddenly in my mind I was like, cool. So, you know, I can do this. But then at the same time, I was afraid of losing my visa. I didn't want to get, you know, like that thing.
Yeah.
So I never do anything dodgy. And a very common thing, as we all know, like it's people finding ways to extend their stay in the country.
Yes.
Man, I'm so like, I'm not a big fan of the pride thing because, you know, I do my thing, but like I never missed a date, you know, like I never missed like one line in my visa application. Like I was so focused in everything that I was doing to make sure that it was legit. That's why it took me so long to become a resident, to get a solid, good job, because I was not cutting corners. Because it clicked. I'm like, that's why the place works, because people respect each other, you know, more than in Brazil, right? More than in Brazil compared to what I'm used to, you know. So
we all got rent to pay.
But at the same time, by saying that and understanding that, I also realized, wow, colonization hit Aotearoa, New Zealand hard. It hit us even harder. You know, like it's hard to compare, but you know what I mean? Like it still plays a big role because we have misery. Brazil has misery. New Zealand, it might have, but I'm not aware of like starvation.
Different level of misery, like not on the same scale, probably.
You know, and then when you understand that, it's like, and then you start to feel bad. You feel sorry. You're like, damn, it's not that the people are dodgy. It's that the culture that we grew up with makes you have this instinct, that survival instinct, you know, like, so I stopped blaming people.
It's just another flavour of colonialism, isn't it? It looks slightly different everywhere, but
So, you know, now I'm going back to Brazil, and after 7 years, Dad's turning 70.
Ooh.
Big party.
And because they came to New Zealand for the first time in 10 years, and when he saw the lifestyle that I'm experiencing, he was like, oh, if you want to go to that place or that place, you let me know, and then I'll take you, because like he knows that my life was always bus, subway, walk, whatever. You know, not hitchhike, because you don't do that in Brazil. But like he told me,
Get kidney stolen? Is it that kind of?
Okay.
You get a ride and swap for a kidney or whatever. So, no, I'm joking. Kind of, yeah.
But only kind of.
But his concern of what I'm used to, that was very interesting to see, you know, like he's worried about the way that I see life nowadays because I leave my car running when I go to the terrace, because we didn't lock. Like he was so worried. We were going to bed.
You're too chill now. You're
in
too
Fitenda, and he's like, oh, do I lock this? Do I check this? Why do I have to? And I'm like, you chill.
You're like, why?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
You've just come from Brazil.
Yes. So it was interesting to see how they worry about what I'm going to experience there. Not because...
when you go back
when I go back.
Right, okay. They're probably worried you're going to leave their house open and everything's going to be gone.
Could be that too.
He's going to come here and he's going to leave the house unlocked, isn't he?
We can't let him out of our sight. He's definitely going to get jumped.
He'll get his kidneys stolen.
He's too friendly now.
He's turned into Mr. Nice Guy that trusts people.
I know, right? And it's such a beautiful thing. Like I've probably, it's one of the things that I enjoy the most. Like, you know, it's like I trust. If Taylor says sometimes, man, don't forget we're running a business, you know, like people, you know, like be mindful of that, you know, like even when people are sounding cool.
Oh, you've got to have some voice of reason, eh, bro?
Thanks, Taylor, for being the
we
voice
all
of
need
reason.
one.
But it's good for the soul to trust people, isn't it?
It is,
because at least like you did the best you could.
I
trusted the motherfucker and he ripped me off, but I did my part.
My grandfather had the saying, piss on me once, shame on you, piss on me twice, shame on me.
Yeah,
kia ora, Granddad.
Yeah, I always think I give people a lot of rope, but once you've hung yourself, you
That's
are stuffed. But I think for people who don't trust people, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why people live in a state where they don't trust, and they've, you know, and then you do see people who are one step further with a siege mentality, and I just think that must be so hard. That must be such a really exhausting way to live. And I think, sure, if you trust people, you might get it wrong every now and then, but it's actually an easier way to be in your own head. I think having that internal mentality that things could go wrong or someone might be about to get you. It's just exhausting. It's really exhausting.
Do you deal with a lot of people coming to you like who are full of some kind of anger or hate or like, you know, like some kind of
Not
because
so
of
much.
because of the situation where they're in, like in the society, in the role that they're in? No.
Not so much the anger, no.
Okay.
Are you more so dealing with trauma?
Yeah, we might change the subject because I feel I'm getting too
Yeah,
close
sorry.
to some
That's
of
cool.
my social
Yeah,
work
yeah,
stuff.
fair
Yeah,
enough,
but
fair
yeah.
enough.
But that's
yeah.
what we were touching on
yeah,
before, hey?
Yeah, it's a hard world, and there's a lot of people have experienced very hard lives. Yeah. So.
Maddie, tell me a little bit about. I think we can mention what happened last Friday, can we, or maybe not?
Briefly.
So it was. I just wanted you to tell me a little bit about. We don't have to give names or anything, but like the ceremony and the importance of a moko kawai for wahines for.
Yeah. So we had good friends of mine had their moko kawai on Friday.
Nice.
And it was just such a beautiful day.
Yep.
These guys got to come along and share in that moment,
Such
and that
a
was
privilege.
like such. It was, like for all the whānau involved, but for these guys, we've been talking about it. You know, like
Yep.
experiencing someone else's culture wholeheartedly.
Oh yeah,
And being a part of
absolutely,
that, and it
yeah.
was just so significant. And you walked away feeling so honoured, and everyone who's like, we're still kind of coming down off of that, you know, like 'cause we're on this ultimate high.
So is that a thing where when you're having moko kawai that you have whānau there?
Yeah,
It
most
is,
of the time.
yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, it's, again, up to your kaita, or to the individual, the wahine, or the tāne if they're getting mataora,
Yep.
full face. But, yeah, generally you got your whānau there with you, and they better keep singing. It's very special moment. So that was pretty cool. These guys got to come along and
That's
experience
pretty
some
special.
of that. And
yeah.
but my kids are still coming down from the high.
So how many people were there?
Oh, between 70 and. I
Oh,
would
wow.
say.
Yeah, so it was a
And like during the day,
yeah,
because
it
there's
was
some
pretty,
kids,
it was
a lot
pretty
of
special
kids
day. We
came
had
from the
tamariki
school.
from our school and students of whānau and from afar as well, and so
Wow, so that's a really big deal.
it's
That's
an awesome kaupapa, you know,
Yeah.
and that's like not only sharing our culture with our friends and whānau,
Yeah.
but that's also putting our actual cultural practices into play
Into
in real
play,
time
yep.
for our tamariki who are doing the mahi at school to actually experience this. Some of our kids here who've never even been to a marae, for instance, so
Right.
you know, like have these opportunities and opening the door
Yes, to te ao
to let
Māori.
people in, because you know it's not a scary place.
No.
We're actually pretty lovely people.
Yeah,
like, as we are, you know, we're all
Yes.
human. But just opening those spaces and letting
Wow.
them in.
Wow. That is cool. That would have been a cool thing
was
to,
incredible.
to go to. Yeah.
And the food was amazing.
I was going to say, they'll be kai, because, you know, there always is kai
Yeah,
for everything, eh?
I know.
Yeah.
I'm a feeder.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, we could be a match made
It's
in heaven.
terrible.
Because I'm an eater.
I know. I'm addicted to cooking for people who aren't hungry and who aren't present. So like sometimes I
right.
just like think of someone like my brother or something, and I'm like, right, I'm going to cook a roast lamb, or I'm going to make a boil up, or whatever it is.
And then do you like turn
And then
up
I
to his
just-
place with it?
Well, no, my brother, one lives in Auckland,
Oh,
one lives in
okay.
Hamilton, and one's in Perth, so I've got no brothers to feed.
So you make it and then feed whoever's
So I make
handy?
this like
or?
massive like food, like feast. I'm like halfway through cooking, and then I'm like,
Who's
oh
eating it?
shit. No one's even here. It's just me. Like, who am I feeding? And then I'm like, oh, is anyone hungry? Like,
Yeah. Send the message around.
Facebook groups, eh? Bring the
Oh.
friends home.
oh my God. It was like, maybe I should just start selling my food. That'd
Yeah,
be a
why
good
don't
idea.
you? Yeah, that would
Save
probably
me
make a
some
lot of
money.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Di,
Feeding
thank
them.
you so much for joining us.
You
That's
are most welcome.
such an
It's
inspiring
been
conversation.
awesome. It's been very cool.
Thank you. For the people who are dealing with some, like, they just want to reach out and have a chat, like, what are the ways? Because it sounds simple sometimes, like, because I'm involved, because I'm in the educational system, because Maddie's doing her thing, you know, like bringing people together and facilitating spaces.
Yeah.
It sounds ordinary for us. It's just like, oh yeah, you know, we're here. Come for a chat. But, like,
Networking
you know. But for the people who don't have access to these basic informations, what do you recommend? Like we're in the Coromandel, but like New Zealand has beautiful resources. Like what are the easiest ways
for
to
people
look
struggling with well-being?
Yeah. What would you give to us? Like some tips?
Wow, that's a hard question, because you can go down the medical route, and I'm not knocking the medical route at all, but I am absolutely a firm believer in te whare tapawha. And
what is the
so te whare tapawha is it's probably the most, I like te wheke as well, which is the octopus. I love te wheke, but for the sake of simplicity, it's a holistic health model, and I do believe, and in my final year of social work, I wrote my last paper on the piece missing is taha wairoa, and which is spirituality,
which is what you see in most Western paradigms.
It is, yes, and it's what's missing. I know people are like, I'm not going to pray with a client, or I'm not going to talk about spirituality, and it can be anything. It can be getting out with nature. It can be taking those silent moments. It might be meditation. It might be going to church. It's whatever you need, and I think you can. Obviously, if you've got issues you need to deal with, seek help. Through your GP, get some counselling. You can call agency. Like I work for Pacifico, and we have lots of contracts to work with lots of different kinds of people in different situations. But you can always call people like Pacifico, because if you're based here, it's hard to get good support. But maybe we can help. It's really hard. You are remote and rural, and that makes life difficult, whether it's physical health or mental health. But yeah, I think finding someone that can support you in that very holistic model. I love there's a different model that's a positive psychology model that's PERMA, and it's positive emotions, and so that's gratitude and that really deeply felt gratitude and engagement. So finding something that gets you into that state of flow where you can get out of this constant chatter that we all have in our head, and having at least one good relationship that you can rely on, having some meaning, and meaning is obvious. It's that attachment to something bigger than yourself, to nature. It could be volunteering with something that's
that's my punareo.
Yeah,
that's what got me through last year.
Yeah,
having
it's
purpose,
that sense
something
of meaning,
to get up for and do during the day.
Meaning is traditionally, I think people got meaning from their religion. That was probably traditional, and because it enables you to answer existential questions. Something really bad happened, but God moves in mysterious ways, or it is what it is, or that's how it's meant to be. And then the last one's achievement, and we've all got to be able to have little things we can achieve. It doesn't matter how big they are. So I think, find someone that understands holistic, full health and well-being, and
just reach out.
Just reach out. Yeah. I know that they say that it doesn't matter what the modality is, that you're being counselled or supported in. It's about the connection you have with somebody. So, reach out. If that doesn't work, reach out again. And if that doesn't work, reach out again.
Just keep reaching.
Do you believe we are going... Sorry, now we're going... do you believe we are going towards a place where there's a merge of the holistic approach and the traditional? I don't know if traditional is the word, like the
I think
medicines.
I'd like to think there has to be. I think the research that's happening around, like things like cold therapy, we know that cold therapy and cold immersion is good for mental well-being. It does the adrenaline thing, but it's that mental barrier of, I can do this, it's not easy. But there's also the other things. They're doing research now. Psychedelics will be here. There's medicinal cannabis already, but psychedelics in terms of mental health and trauma work will come. There are things that are dancing around there that are now considered almost mainstream. In some countries, those things are mainstream.
Yeah.
I maybe naively would like to think we're heading towards a holistic, path to wellbeing. However, I still think that we have got a big barrier around taha wairoa.
Oh, yeah.
Taha wairoa, so that's spiritual health. You probably can explain that better than I can in its proper context.
It's your wairoa. So it's like your essence, your being within you. You call it your spirit, So some people say, like, when you die, your spirit goes away. But you've got to look after that, and you've got to nourish that. That's your innermost being, Do you understand?
I do understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your soul, your inner essence, how do you take care of that? Because that's not being fed with your physical food.
And that's it.
it's,
It's so silenced and suppressed now. We don't acknowledge that.
No. And a lot of
again,
people are not
religion
comfortable.
and cultural and society changes, etc., and your environment all factor in. But and then the effects of colonisation, so you might not necessarily know how to nourish that part of your being.
And the fact that we have, and it's undeniable that a lot of the traditional religions have now had very big problems with some of the stuff that's gone in with them. So things have gone on that shouldn't have gone on, and you can see why now. A lot of people, the church is full of evil people.
And then again, we go back to like the Quran, you're saying like the interpretation of
It's the interpretation, and we'd like to think we can move on that, but it is move on from that. But it is a shame that for a very big chunk of the population, I think their attitude would be that religion's got a problem, it amasses wealth, it harbours paedophiles, but the essence of that spirit of connection with something bigger than self, and with that, people say, God sits within us, or whatever your higher power is, or
that may be.
Buddha's sitting there within you, and whatever that is, it feels like, I'm going to say that we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, if that makes sense. We've sort of abandoned belief systems by and large.
I appreciate what you said about the psychedelics, because the more you unpack and you start to understand the start of a lot of those religions, it's very likely that a lot of those people who had those visions, they were experiencing some sort of psychedelic trip. Maybe not even because of a substance, but because of breathing. Because that's how you get there. The psychedelic is a shortcut, right? But you can do that through your own breathing.
You can, Well, Wim Hof's breathing techniques apparently can do that. But I listened to a podcast. We talked about podcasts that I listen to a lot of, and there is a guy was saying that he uses breathing as the same as a different pathway to get to the same outcome of having that slightly altered consciousness. But breathing will do it. Wim Hof will say that sometimes you'll get this sense of euphoria if you do his breathing technique, and
so have you experienced it yet?
Not the euphoria. No, I've got through a few rounds of, and it's like, okay, I'm not feeling euphoric.
Am I doing it right?
No, I think I'll just go back to the cold water.
It's like instant.
So no, I haven't quite got as far as euphoria.
I'm terrible with breathing. That's why I try to go along to yoga when I can, when I haven't hurt my back from kickboxing. but like I just, like in moments when you're experiencing like childbirth, for instance, they're like, breathe, and I'm like.
There's a fascinating book out called Breath or Breathe. Yeah. Very simple. And
James Nestor.
Yes, fascinating book about, something that we do all day, every day. So simple, and yet such great messages in there. We just take it for granted. But it turns out a lot of us are doing it really wrong. So, great book that.
Great book, and how he also taps into the physiology, like how our bodies are changing because we don't know how to breathe properly.
Wouldn't that be amazing if they like taught you this stuff at school?
At school, let's just sit down. Oh, can you imagine? Now what did you do today? We breathed for an hour. Actually, it's probably going to be life changing, but mum and dad might not think it's high achieving enough.
Yeah.
Watch out, pharmaceutical industry. The podcast industry is coming to get you. I think we joked about doing a very long show, but we might,
and here we are.
Have we done we have done a very long show.
We might as well bring you back because we got so many cool things to talk about.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been fun. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for accepting the invitation.
No, that's fine.
Do you
the
want to
whole
do it? Yes,
last minute thing.
Yes.
Good vibe, good banter.
Yeah, no, really good.
Big
really
shout
good.
out to our dear friend Janine Werner for facilitating this space and this corero.
Yeah. Thanks, Janine. Her words were, I've thrown you under the bus.
Actually,
but it's cool. It's a great bus.
She put you to drive the bus. That's what she meant.
Yeah.
It's fun, hey.
Oh, really good. Yeah, really awesome format. Love it.
Thank you so much. It's a big thing for us, like obviously it started as something that we like, and we saw the potential because Aotearoa is going on the right direction, but it's not big yet. So we were like, if we start pedaling before the wave, once the wave comes, we'll be there. But now, you know, as life is, it's shifting. We're like, this is cool for us, for the community,
It's
for,
flowing
you know,
so
like,
well.
and networking is just a crazy thing. Once you open that box, it just goes non-stop. So opportunities. So thank you so much,
You're
Maddie,
welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
accepting the invitation. We'll do this again.
Great to meet you guys.
Me koe hoki.
There you go.
Kia koe.
Thank you. And for us watching us at home, thank you so much. We'll be back on Thursday if everything goes well. I don't even know what to say, if I should say, because every time that I say it doesn't work. But MC Tali, old school DJ.
Shut the front fucking door. No.
I know, right? See, but that's the thing.
What?
She's flying. That's how fancy we are. We're flying her to Whitianga. So I hope the weather is fine because it's all confirmed. It's all good for Thursday. So we are
By
hoping
Thursday, it will be fine.
by Thursday it will be fine. And you guys will have the pleasure to enjoy a beautiful corero with MC Tali sitting here in front of us. I'll see you on Thursday at 7 p.m.
Someone's a little excited.
Oh my God. We might have to bring
We're gonna
Maddie
have to
back.
crank that after
We
we
need,
turn
we
the
need
lights off,
a
eh?
dance party night. That's what
Yeah,
we
we should do
need.
that at the Monkey House with Molly and Casper.
We're going to do it now. See you guys. We're
Do
going
a
to
live
start.
broadcast.
We can. Excuse me, guys. We're going to start a dance party. I'll see you on Thursday. Peace.
Bye.